Hey everyone, thank you for joining us today on Beyond Real Estate with Jalen, where we strive to edutain, that is, educate a little and entertain more. Here we discuss topics surrounding hashtag dadlife, briefly talk about a current hot topic within the real estate industry, and end with business bookend before getting to know someone just a little bit better.
Welcome everyone to this week's episode of Beyond Real Estate. I'm Jalen. This is Nick Gumpert, as always. So today we have quite a few fun things that we're going to be running down. And the first section, as always, is going to be some hashtag dad life, which I've heard from some future guests that are women, that they want us to keep it as hashtag dad life and to not change it because they feel that there is a biology component that anyone that gets offended by hashtag dad life, like we just don't appreciate women. There's a biology component that they believe we understand is necessary to be a dad. And so they're okay with us calling it hashtag dad life, even when they're on. So I appreciated that. So hashtag dad life, today we're going to be talking about demonizing the present. I think it's been a classic tale of all of human history where whatever the new thing is now demonized. So reading a book instead of going outside, watching TV instead of reading a book, playing video games instead of watching TV. And now today it's onto the cellular devices and iPads. And I don't think that iPods are too popular, but the iPods as well. So the quote that we kind of have in our show notes is we judge our kids based on yesterday while they live today, which is the best indication for what's going to happen tomorrow. So on that note, Nick, how are you doing today?
Doing well, thanks.
Good. Glad to hear it. And what do you think about demonizing the present? What's something that you see a lot of people criticizing the younger generations for that don't necessarily agree that it's a bad thing, or maybe it's not as bad as some people think?
Yeah, I think you touched on it already. It's the technology piece, right? The more technology we have in our everyday life and lifestyles, the harder it is for past generations to accept that because it's not what they know. It's not what they understand. With that being said, I think it becomes a problem when you have too much of it, but I think that goes for anything. Too much of anything is a bad thing. I think if you have things in moderation, that's not a bad thing. So that's where my head goes to straight away.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, sugar has been around forever, and it wasn't because of just eating sugar that people became obese or started having health problems. It was the overconsumption of sugar that ultimately led to the obesity and heart problems and all the fun things that go along with overindulging in anything. Did you ever have a problem with, did you ever get called out for playing too many video games or watching too much TV when you were younger?
Maybe the TV part, but there's nothing that's just ingrained in my head of saying like, yeah, I can remember every summer was an issue or that came up a lot. Yeah, so maybe the TV, but it helps when you have siblings. It helps when you're restricted a little bit in terms of what technology did allow when I was growing up, even versus when you were growing up, let alone today, right? So I think the amount of options that kids do have at their disposal, you just have such a plethora of options nowadays that can go from one screen into the next screen, versus before it was like, okay, you got a TV that you had to change the knob. You didn't even have a channel changer. You had to go up to the TV to change the channel. Then you got a remote, and you didn't have really other options. You got a little bit of a Nintendo, but again, you didn't have the option to go from a Nintendo to an iPad to a computer, right?
Yeah.
So I think the fact that the amount of screens in a different setting just creates that many more options, which again, it's not bad in moderation, but I think that's where the demonizing comes from. So.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think my wife and I, Monica, are having the exact same kind of debate on a daily basis, especially with our 4-year-old who enjoys his tablet time. Enjoys might be an understatement. He would love to be on it 24/7, and so you have to have some sort of moderating ability. And we find ourselves even kind of negotiating with him with things that I know, my parents, and I think with Nintendo, I'm sure there was definitely some negotiations with that. I remember playing Nintendo as well, and so it was always like, hey, go outside, don't play games all day, let's do something else. So there was that moderation aspect of things. But with our son Emerson, we're having almost a negotiation of, buddy, you can only do 2 hours of tablet time throughout the entire day, but if you want to go and play video games, that's a much more engaging and not active in the common sense, but a mentally active activity than just passively watching something. What are your thoughts on that, with Diego getting still nowhere near it, but it's very surprising at how quickly they latch on to technology and are like, oh yeah, I got this figured out.
Yeah.
Have you and Bree had that conversation of like, hey, I think this is a limit that we're going to put on it, or does that even come up at the dinner table or in the car?
Not yet, based on the fact that, yeah, he's not at that age yet. We have talked about the hypotheticals of when not you, but when we should get him a phone or not, of like,
Yeah.
8's too young or 10's too young. Like, what age is too young? Because I think any parent can always play that what if card. Yeah, but what if they
Yeah.
need to call me because an emergency? And I guess in my head, I'm thinking, I got through just fine in life without a cell phone in emergencies.
Yeah.
Like, does a kid in 2022 really need one? Because if everybody else has one, do they need one? I don't know. So I guess the proof of the pudding, of course, will be when the day comes and he's 7 or 8 and he asks for it because all of his friends or some of his friends are starting to dabble in it, right?
Yeah.
So that's my long-winded answer for, have we had that discussion yet? We've talked about the cell phone, but not gaming to say, yeah, we need to restrict him to X amount of time yet.
Yeah.
Based on the fact that he's not there yet.
Yep. And I feel like that discussion only comes really when you're like, man, this kid is on it. Like
I'm sure.
they just won't, yeah, we're just gonna take this away. So yeah. And I think it's also interesting to kind of talk about so many times, and back to that Gary Vee quote of, it's conducive to what the future may hold, is when you look back, say 20 years ago, when gaming, quote unquote gaming, was still in its infancy with like what competitive gaming was and stuff like that. Now gaming places are selling out arenas. People that watch and react to YouTube are making millions of dollars a year because they have millions of people wanting to see their reaction to things. So it's almost as though saying no can hamper your kids' potential career paths when it comes to, no, we're going to restrict gaming. That's not, I don't know. Maybe I'm talking to a brick wall. If you don't agree, what do you think of professional gaming and YouTubers and influencers as a whole?
It's a world I don't understand a whole lot, that's for sure. And because I don't understand it, I can't say I can make much sense of why would somebody spend so much time in there. With that being said, the fact that technology has essentially flattened so many walls that were once an issue. I can watch someone who's gaming in Asia or someone who's gaming in Europe. Like, and that's just our reality now that we never had, or nor did our parents, let alone you and I. So it's just these new opportunities that you alluded to, influencer. Like, that was never a thing in the 1980s. Nobody cared because there was no opportunity for that. Right.
Yeah,
and so now that there are, right. So I think it's an interesting one, and it's so easy to demonize things, especially because we're all victims of the moment, right? And I say that really across any profession. You think of the sports arena, and we're victims of the moment because Golden State Warriors, nobody cared about them 25 years ago, and now, like, they're the best, and the Brooklyn Nets. And so I think you can go in any space and influencers are no different with technology in the gaming space. It's like it's the flavor of the month, and it's what's hot. It's what people are talking about, so that grabs attention. And I think from older generations, that's why, right? I don't get it. I don't understand it. It must be bad, because I didn't grow up with it, and you guys are just lazy because you don't want to work for your money. Well,
Oh yeah. Yeah, that was another discussion that we've had with both of our boys. Like if they wanted to say strike out and become a professional gamer, it's like, who am I to be like, no, what you're passionate about, I just don't understand it, and I don't think you should try to make it a profession. It's like,
hold on, you've already had that discussion with them? If they want to drop
Monica,
out of school.
with Monica.
Oh. I was like, that's quite the discussion with Emerson at 4 years old.
Like, son, sit down. Put the ball down. We're gonna talk.
Father-son time. Hashtag dadlife right now.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's more, I think with something like that, a lot of people have also just taken the wrong approach when it comes to kind of instilling let's say the values that they want to instill in their kid. Instead of seeing, oh, they have a passion, they'd like to make money doing this, they want to make a career out of this, instead of saying, well, we're going to apply the same type of structure that you're going to need just in a regular job. Let's apply that to what you're wanting to do. I mean, everyone with like if a kid wants to do a lemonade stand is going to have that exact same experience. The parents are going to sit down. All right, let's talk profit loss. Oh, well, it took you $5 to make this pitcher and you sold each cup for 75 cents. And so you made a profit of 82 cents. So who ripped you off, son? Because those numbers don't make sense. So those are the things, though, that's like, yeah, you're instilling in them a sense of, here's how to do a business, here's how to work hours. It's like, yeah, my one thing with our kids, if they want to say, oh, I want to be a professional YouTuber, it's like, great, we're gonna talk about ad revenue, we're going to talk about a schedule, we're going to talk about all these things, and so they can still get the same basic things that they would from just working a crappy job that they have no passion for, and just apply it to something that they maybe do have passion for.
Sure.
Because that's ultimately what it comes down to, isn't it? I mean, if when it comes to saying no, there's no reason to go after that, or don't do that, or you can't drop out of school for this or that. It's like, well, it's because you're not going to have the necessary skills to advance your career. You're not going to have the necessary skills to advance in society. But I feel like you can just apply that to what they want to do. What do you think of that?
No, I agree, because again, technology is such spearheads it all. And it just makes and facilitates things so much better than what it compared to where we were, right? We didn't have those options at our fingertips, so we were so much more reliant on the school system to prepare us for the game of life. And now that you have technology, it's almost like the school system can't keep up with the ever changing and evolving demands and opportunities that technology allows. It just expands so quickly. And so you have jobs that didn't exist 10 years ago. Right? You have crypto. Like who invented crypto? The whole concept that could even be a topic. It's like nobody would have thought of that 20 years ago. So I think there again, it takes an imagination, it takes creativity, and it takes resources that weren't allowed, but they just weren't in place. Right? The infrastructure wasn't there to support them. And the reality is, your kids and my kids are going to understand technology much better than we do. And podcasts are probably going to be like a laughable thing. Like, what'd you do that for? When you can just do this.
Yeah. Why weren't you doing TikTok that whole time? I don't get it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Average attention span is 30 seconds. Why are you doing a podcast?
Yeah.
Fair point, son. Fair point.
Yeah. Well, and to kind of wrap this one up, I think it's just important to keep an open mind versus saying no. Maybe a better response is, let me think about it. And if I can maybe understand it somehow a little bit better or ask some questions, maybe it's me asking my kid questions, right?
Oh yeah.
We think we have all the answers all the time as the parent, be like, no, why? Because I didn't have that, so you can't have that. And it's like, let's take a time out. Let me think about it. And maybe is a better response than the quick, easy, fast no.
Yeah. Humble yourself, parents. Humble yourself. However you think of your parents when you were that age, your kids think of you the same way. Like,
right.
I get full of ourselves. Like, mom and dad just don't understand the great business opportunity there is in playing video games for 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
Son, that's a stupid idea. 10 years later, son, why don't you ever do video games 10 hours a day? That guy's making millions of dollars a week. A month. Like, thanks. So yeah, no, I think we both came to a nice conclusion on that. So we'll hop right over into our next segment, Real Estate Roundup, where today we're going to be talking about the 3 I's. So stick around for after the break, where we jump into that portion of the show. See you guys back in just a few seconds.
Hey everybody, just wanted to let you know, regardless of how you want to learn about the real estate market, I have you covered. If you want to read about it, I've got a blog. If you want to listen to it, you're doing it right now. You can watch me on my YouTube channel. And if you want to experience it, I can help you personally navigate the real estate space. Regardless of how you want to stay informed or experience real estate, I got you covered. Just reach out at your convenience. Hopefully we'll talk soon.
Hey everybody, thanks for checking back in. We've got our real estate roundup for this week, which is the 3 I's dominating today's real estate space, being interest rates, inventory, and inflation. So wanted to dig into these because, like I said, all of these seem to be a revolving door right now with which one's grabbing the headlines. Jay, you're in the lending space. Let's start off with the interest rates because you have even better experience than I do pertaining to what that space looks like.
Yeah, interest rates we're starting to see them kind of flatten out for the time being. Interest rates are always predicting worst case scenarios on the future. So the more turbulent currently we are, the more turbulent our real estate our interest rates are going to be. And usually that means they're going to rise because you got to have the same view as the banks. They're wanting to essentially make sure they make money for the long term. And so if they expect there to be some tumultuous activity in the market or world events or whatever it may be, they're going to raise interest rates to kind of hedge their bets against a more poor economic outlook than would be otherwise. So we already knew there's going to be some Fed hike rates, all that boring stuff. But then on top of that, there was a war in Ukraine. So
let's talk though, how does interest rates affect the average home buyer today? So without like all that jargon, because I can imagine most people are just like, just tell me something that relates to me, because you can blame Ukraine on this and that, and the Fed does this and that, but if I'm looking for a home right now, what do I need to know?
Yeah, you got to know that your options need to be a little bit broader than a 30-year fixed. Now we're going back to those times where an interest rate, you're going to have better interest rates at, say, a 5-1 ARM or a 7-1 ARM. And
what's a 5-1 ARM?
5-1 ARM.
Yes. I'm a first-time home buyer.
Yes, first-time home buyers out there. So 5-1 or 7-1 ARM haven't been too popular the last few years because interest rates have been so low. But a 5-1 ARM, essentially that 5 part means that you have a fixed interest rate for 5 years. And then that 1 part on the end of it means that every year after that, the interest rate will readjust based on an index and the index and the, I drew a blank. Basically, it fluctuates though based on what's going on in the market. So,
and
good market, better
ARM
interest rate.
For
adjustable rate mortgage.
Okay.
But with that, again, 7-1 ARM, 5-1 ARM. That 5 and that 7 means you have a fixed interest rate for both the 5 years and the 7 years, respectively. The shorter that initial period, the better the interest rate because they're not worried about basically losing money on that. It's a short-term gamble for them.
So are you saying if I got a loan today for a 5-1 ARM, which is, again, a fixed rate for 5 years, that'll give me a better rate than the 7-1 arm because again, it's a shorter term.
That's what we're starting to see. Yep, that's what we're starting to see. So, and that's how it's been historically with the ridiculously low rates that we saw these last few years. A 30-year fixed and a arm were about the same. Banks didn't want to offer too much lower in interest rate, or usually about the same interest rate for an arm, because they didn't want to effectively lose money for the next few years. So
how about, do you have any unfortunate real life examples of individuals that maybe you were working with or you heard someone else was working with in your office where interest rates affected their ability to get into a house recently?
Yeah, it's definitely becoming a bigger and bigger thing as interest rates. At one point last month, interest rates rose 0.5% in just a week. And so with that, if your interest rate is higher and you can only borrow up to a certain amount of debt to income, right? Your mortgage can only be up to a certain portion of your income. So if you have a higher interest rate, that means that your monthly mortgage payment would be higher for that amount of money, meaning in order to stay below that threshold of what you can be approved for, you have to either lower the loan amount or buy down your interest rate again. So that's been the biggest thing, is higher interest rates mean less people can borrow as much money as they were able to prior to that interest rate hike.
So when you say buy down interest rate, let me get this straight. So interest rate, let's pretend 5%. And I say, but Jalen, I heard about these 3%. You're saying I can buy down, and maybe not even to 3. Let's just use 4, 1 full percent. You're saying I can pay you money to go from the current rate of 5% interest rate and get to a 4% for my mortgage to make that payment more affordable, correct?
Yep, we're paying whatever bank we're getting your loan
How
through.
much?
Depends. And that usually depends on your credit too. Your credit is a factor of that, and also the loan amount. There's basically a lot of factors that have to be taken into account, and so you want to make sure that you're seeing.
Can you give a ballpark? It's going to be in and around this, give or take 2,000, or give and take even 5,000. Is that big of a wiggle room?
Yeah, it can really be. It can be big. It can be.
Give me the best case scenario. I have the perfect credit score, and I want to buy down a full percent. Best case scenario is it's going to cost me how much to buy down a full percent?
Probably a couple percentage points, so 2 to 3 to 4, again depending on everything, but at least a couple percent of the loan amount. So say you're 500,000, in order to get that, a couple percent would mean 5,000, 10,000,
5,000 with the best credit score.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
We're not talking about hundreds of dollars. We're talking about
And it comes down to, at that point, what's your break-even point? A lot of people go, oh, I have this much lower interest rate. I'm saving this money per month. It's like, no, you spent $10,000 to get that interest rate. So if you saved $100 per month but you spent $10,000 to save $100 per month, there's a break-even point of when you actually are really saving money. So if you're say in the military and you're going to leave in a couple of years, does it make sense to buy down the rate if you're going to move in 2 years, but the break-even point's in 5? It's like, no.
Yeah.
So
for those listeners that are absolutely maybe lost right now, this is why you lean on professionals and ask questions, because it's not your job as a prospective buyer to necessarily understand all of it, especially initially, but it is your responsibility to know what you're getting yourself into and to know your options. And so that's why it's important to surround yourself with good people who know their space well, so they can offer you these options and explain them in an individual one-on-one meeting to make sense of this. Because I'm sure for many listeners, it becomes very complex, very quick. And there's like, Jay, you had me lost at buy back, or buy down. And it's like, what?
100%. Yep.
Yeah. What is simple for you and I to comprehend is difficult for the average, which again is no discredit to anybody. That's the complexity of this space. And yours and my responsibility to understand it, so we can look at different options even when interest rates are going up.
And be more creative with it. So
creative but legal, right? It's not doing things. Saying, "Gosh, I hope nobody looks at me right now and exposes me." It's perfectly legal. It's just understanding the rules of the game, right? You can't win unless you know the rules of the game you're playing with, and too often Yeah, too often people feel like there's only one way to tackle something or to address something. It's like, no. Yeah, but if you work with someone who's very well versed in what to do and how to go about doing it, they're going to be able to go at it a couple different ways.
Yep.
Um,
Get you to
I,
where you
I,
want to
I
be.
also, yeah, and I also wanted to touch on the black and white of interest rates. I've said this a couple times, but wanted to share it here too. A full interest rate change, and let's pretend they increase in this hypothetical situation, because they are in reality. They bump from 4% to 5%. For those prospective homebuyers, your buying power fluctuates in and around 10%. So again, what does that mean dollar wise? If you were comfortable with a monthly payment of a $500,000 home, you're just like, yep, that gets me what I want. And in California, let's pretend it's a 2-bed, 2-bath at 500,000, and the interest rate again was 4% on January 1. And now we're saying, oh nope, it's 5% now. That means you need to look at a house that is $450,000, right, to keep that same monthly payment. If that maxed you out and you're like, I can't afford anything more than that, you now need to look at a house that's in and around $450,000 to keep that same monthly payment. What does that mean? That means home prices, unfortunately for you, have gone up, which means you are probably not looking, if you're looking at a 2-bed, 2-bath, it's probably a little bit farther of a drive, right? Versus where you might have been looking on January 1. It might mean that you're looking at a 1-bed, 1-bath now, or a 2-bed, 1-bath.
Yep. Compromise.
So it's your ability to A, be informed, and B, you might have to compromise. What are you going to give up to get in?
Yep.
And there's always that give and take. But that's the black and white portion of how do interest rates affect your life as a prospective home buyer. It's a 1 to 10% rule. Jalen, anything to add on that?
No, I think we covered it as superficially and with all the important stuff without getting too bogged down in every little detail. You can definitely do that with interest rates. Talking numbers on a podcast can definitely be hard to follow very quickly. So, all right.
Again, lean on professionals, because that's what we're here for. And I think not enough individuals, and Jalen, maybe your experiences are different, but I feel like not enough individuals use us as resources. Ask questions. It's free to pick up the phone or to shoot an email or to text and say, hey, would you mind answering a couple questions for me on this? Because there's nothing worse than feeling like you're alone. You're the only one that is dealing with it, and that's that. So
yeah, 100%. Always just reach out. Email, text, phone. It's a lot easier to get your questions answered now versus being like, oh shoot, yep, apparently I can't own a home now. That's what I'm hearing on the news. So,
right.
Maybe not. So
Jay, real quick, actually, wanted to actually hit on interest rates going up and inflation, because we haven't dug into inflation. Thoughts on anything you've come across pertaining to how home prices change pertaining to interest rates and or inflation?
Yeah, well, the less money someone can qualify for, the less desirable those more expensive, or the houses that were kind of on the edge of being affordable versus not affordable, saying like $300,000 house, but more people could offer a higher, could do a higher offer because they could get qualified for more money. Now that that's slowly going away, it means that home prices are starting to, and I mean, they should be, we've all been expecting it, but they're starting to not be jumping leaps and bounds above where they were before, where it was like, oh yeah, we're putting in 20,000 over asking price or something like that. It's everyone has to be smarter, including sellers. They can't overlist a house like they could before. People don't want to overpay if they can't finance that overpayment. So you're definitely seeing that. And even with people that put more money over asking price, that's only about 20% of houses anyway. And that's kind of how it's been for most of this crazy time. So all the people that have been saying, housing prices are skyrocketing to the roof and stuff like that, it's like, yeah, but generally they're about where they were listed at. They're not going for too far over, and by too far meaning like a full percent over or a couple percents over what the listing price is. So inflation's definitely starting to cool the market and pushing a lot of the people that have been waiting, and now they're not comfortable with their payment anymore. And so those people are pushed out, which is creating a less competitive market as well.
Yeah. I'd like to jump on the back of that one and make mention of a couple graphs I've come across recently. And that is, when interest rates have gone up, home values have continued to go up. I think a lot of people assume, economy is bad and interest rates going up and inflation up, so that means house prices are coming down. At least that's not what we're seeing to date. And that's the facts being the facts, not my opinion saying, well, I think that might happen. So again, listeners out there, be mindful of where the facts lie and where opinions are just shared with nothing behind them. Because it's important to note, home prices do not automatically come down just because we're dealing with this inflation within the economy and with interest rates going up. Home prices have continued to go up. Why? Because supply continues to be low and demand continues to be high. So that's the reason behind it, or the very simplistic reason behind it. And just be mindful, again, don't assume home prices are just going to have the bottom drop out from underneath it, because we've dealt with that. And I'm speaking from looking at a graph right now since 1993, that home prices have continued to go up even when interest rates have risen. What will come down, and Jalen alluded to this, is the amount of homes sold, right? And the amount of homes going over listing price. That slows down, understandably. Why? Because interest rates take some people out of the market altogether, let alone just slows down buying power.
Yeah.
And so, like you said, what some people were willing to put a bid in 100,000 over listing price for 1.3 million became a 1.4 million. Nowadays, interest rates are changing that buying power, and so things aren't selling for as much over list price. So
Yep. And then I have a quick cautionary tale. I had a guy that was not wanting to have his monthly payment over $1,600, including everything, wanting a condo. So he was looking at about $230,000 condo. This was before interest rates increased. He said that he wanted to wait, against the realtor and my objections. He said he wanted to wait to save up enough money to have the down payment that allows him to stay under his threshold and buy maybe a little bit more house. That plan is completely out the window. Interest rates have risen over a full percent since the last time he was, seriously thinking about it.
Yeah.
And so no matter the amount of money he can save, he's never going to catch up with, I want $1,600 for my total monthly payment at this price point. Like, well, that house is appreciating and your interest rates are going to continue to go up. So either you have to buy down the interest rate, do whatever it is, but it's now unattainable to get that house for that price with that amount down. You're going to need to save more money down now. So this is one of the many cautionary tales of just waiting and thinking that the market's going to get better, the market's going to crash, the market's it's not going to happen.
I'm going to share another horror story that happened recently that I was informed about, and that was an individual finally got their offer accepted, and while they were in escrow, interest rates rose. The rate was not locked in, and the rates ticked up, and ultimately they had to withdraw their offer because by the time they were about to lock in rates, they had tried to buy at the max at their highest point, and they had changed enough that it changed their monthly payment, and they had to back out. So there's nothing wrong with the house. Inspections came back fine. It was just when that's the reality. If you don't know your budget and you don't have any wiggle room, understand that, especially this day and age with interest rates doing what they're doing, unfortunately, talk with your lender and understand exactly what numbers you're working with. So that's not you, because that's an unfortunate reality for this day and age. Again, especially for those ill-informed individuals. And maybe by that person's situation, maybe it's just absolutely bad luck. Nonetheless, it happened, right? And it's an experience that I'm sharing with everybody now, saying, don't let that be you. So,
Yeah, that's a bit rough. Yeah.
yeah.
Not locking the interest rate while under contract. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's touch on the very last one, and then we'll move on to our business bookend. So inventory, and we've touched on it quite a few times now, but give us a quick summary, Nick, of what you're seeing with inventory and what the national average for inventory is looking like.
Yeah, inventory nationally is in around 2 months of supply. And for the novice individual, they're just like, what does that mean? All it means is that if everything froze today, it would take approximately 2 months to sell all the homes that are currently on the market. Why does that matter? Well, in a quote unquote neutral market, it's not buyer, it's not seller. You ideally want in around 5 months at least, ideally even 6 months worth of inventory. So for those, again, those pessimists out there, just like, oh, bubble, bubble. In the mid 2000s, we were about in around 9 months of inventory, and depending on where you were in the country, up to 10 months of inventory, which ultimately translates into black and white. That's a lot of homes in comparison. So again, we're at currently 2 nationally. California, we're hovering in and around high 1s and even bottom 2s right now, and that's the facts being the facts. So again, what does that mean? It means it drives prices up. Why? Because it's low supply and there's a lot of demand to live and have their own piece of the pie. So that's inventory.
That's inventory. So now we will take a very short break and then jump right into Mindset by Carol Dweck. That's a fun last name. We'll jump into that to round out the show with Business Bookend. See you guys in a few seconds. Hey, thanks for listening to the podcast so far. Wanted to let you know about something free Nick and I are giving to every single one of our listeners, and that is HomeBot. HomeBot is a free monthly real estate digest. You can know the value of your home, or if you're looking for a home and don't want to be bombarded by realtors giving you calls and mortgage lenders, a free tool that lets you look at what is currently happening in your real estate market. Check the link below and be sure to sign up today. All right, let's jump back into Beyond Real Estate with Jalen. Welcome back to the final segment of Beyond Real Estate. And we're going to be jumping into Business Bookend, Mindset by Carol Dweck, a book that has been on my bookshelf for longer than I care to admit, and I have not read it. However, I'm not the one that said that we should do this book. So, Nick, I will let you take over from here. Explain to us what some key concepts in Mindset by Miss Carol Dweck.
Well, I think it's Dweck, but
that's what I said.
You're overpronouncing the W. It's not Dweck.
I don't know. No, I'm pretty sure it's Dweck.
Right. No, so Mindset, brilliant book, first of all. I got a hold of it, I think in 2008, 2009, something like that for the first time. And I say brilliant for the fact that it does a really good job of presenting different scenarios in different situations where do we have a fixed mindset or a growth mindset? And the fixed mindset is the belief that you can't change. Are you a good math student? Are you born a good math student? Are you born an artist? Or are those things you can learn? And in the fixed mindset, you are what you are. And in the growth mindset, it's I'm not that yet. Right? I can do that. I can improve if I choose to improve. So it goes back and forth, presenting both sides of the story, so to speak, in different examples. And I think an interesting takeaway that I had is all of us are a little bit of both. And I think, unfortunately, again, too many individuals tie themselves to one or the other. We had mentioned extroverts versus introverts last week. And nope, I'm an introvert. Well, hold on. Like I think in different social settings, we are all very much extroverts when we're comfortable. How about around family, right? Yeah. I think some of us totally open up around certain individuals, certain friends. You get you with your best friends. Are you still that same introvert that you are in a massive party of 100? I would find that very surprising if that's the case, right? Yeah. So mindset is no different. I think we have some growth. We all have a growth mindset with things we like because we like it. And we're just like, dude, I sucked a year ago at that, but I'm so good now and it's so fun. Yeah. And there's other roadblocks we create for ourselves mentally. It's like, I stink at that. I'm never going to be good at it, and I don't want to be, and I don't care. Right.
Yeah.
So that's that in a nutshell.
And I mean, it growth mindset is applied to so many things, and I think we all know and I think we have something going on with your audio. Do you have something brushing up against a mic?
No.
Maybe. No? Oh, interesting. Every time you talked, a little scratchy. Yeah, no, we all have that coworker that we just love to work with, where all day, every day, they're just complaining about everything. The job sucks. Why are we here? This is hard. The stuff that I'm doing isn't working. Everyone else is so lucky. And it's like, shut up. Like if you're someone on the outside, you're like, no, that's not the case. You're just bad at your job. Like, let's be very clear about this. This is not the job's fault that you're not good at the job. So that's a very easy and relatable one for all of us, because we've all had that person that we're just like, God, you get home, you tell the spouse asks you, how was your day at work? And you go, Jesus. John was just complaining and whining the entire time. I do everything while he complained about doing work. Like, how does that even work? You're complaining about doing nothing, John. Shout out to all the Johns out there. But yeah, so that's, I think, a very easily relatable one when it comes to that. But ultimately, it comes down to, sounds like, yourself. It comes down to what you decide to paint that picture as. When it comes to whatever job that you're in, I'm sure we've all tried that as well, where we try a new job and we're just like, man, that's just not, or we see someone doing a job that we're like, I could never be that person. I could never do that. I could never be a salesperson. I could never be a porta potty cleaner person. It's just not in me. It's just not who I am. Are there any kind of tips and tricks that Dweck has when it comes to kind of breaking out of that mindset, or readjusting the way that you're viewing the situation? Or
Well, it's exactly that. It's
okay.
having enough self-awareness to understand, is there a different way to look at a problem, right? We just talked about it in our last segment of you being an expert within lending space, of you having a different angle based on your information that you have at your disposal to say, you know what, we can't solve it with that, but we can solve the problem like this. You know, and I think from a mindset standpoint, it comes down to perception. For those that can visualize with me the picture of an old lady and a young lady, and the young lady's looking over her shoulder, and depending on your perspective, it looks like an old lady with a big wart on her nose, and for some people, it looks like a young lady with a nice hood over her head. So for those of you that have seen that picture, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And for those of you that have never seen it, you're just like, what is he trying to paint right now?
Google
Nonetheless, yeah, Google it. Young lady, old lady picture. Boom. You will find it with that. But no, where I was getting to with that is, you will look at the same picture and both people can be right. But again, it comes down to perception and what angle you're looking at it from. And I think that's an interesting way to solve problems, right? It's your perspective. What I also wanted to mention too, and she talks about this one, is how much of a growth mindset young people have, right? When they look at a problem, they're just like, well, I'll just do it this way then. And I'll just do it that way then. Or I think of Diego, he's crawling, right?
Yep.
And we're so encouraging of him to like, keep going, let's go. And we don't care if he falls down. We don't care if he doesn't get it right. It's like, no, keep going. And then it's interesting, as they start getting older, we start putting our filter as a parent on things like, you can't do that. No, don't do it that way. You shouldn't do that way, right? And there again, it's like, well, for some things, well, why? And they ask that question, do they not, Jay? Well, why?
Boy, do they. Boy, do they. Why do we have to go to bed? Because it's dark out. Why is it dark out? Because the Earth rotates. Why does the Earth rotate?
Yeah.
Because the gravitational forces are shut up. Like, don't fight with Isaac Newton.
But it goes back to just, again, young people have it's ingrained in them to have a growth mindset, really, and it's kind of society and us as parents that help shape that growth mindset into being fixed, whether it's our comments off to the side and it's just you and
Oh, yeah.
me, but your son over here is just like, oh, dude, he's such a natural. He's such a natural thrower. He doesn't even have to work hard.
Yeah.
Right. And now all of a sudden they're catching on to these verbiages of, well, he doesn't have to work hard and you're just born that way. Like, you can't tell me kids
Yep.
don't latch on to those comments you and I make, not necessarily directed towards them, but they catch
Yeah.
on to things, right?
And
they
we all
start
do.
thinking,
We all
yeah,
do.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Think about when we praise kids for doing things so fast. Oh, you did it so good and you were so fast. Well, Carol Dweck talks about that. She's like, well, the kid has just put two and two together as fast equals quality or fast
Yeah.
equals good versus your effort that you took or the effort you took to get there was so consistent, right? That's longevity versus when we make these shortcuts. And sometimes it's there again, it's self-awareness of you and
Yeah.
I not realizing sometimes how we term it and we praise them and they latch on to, wow, he said I went fast and I did good. Boom. And now they start skipping things. Now you're just like, well, what'd you do that for?
Yeah.
You know, and they can't explain it, but they heard it.
Yep. And yeah, I mean, we all have that too. We all have to, I mean, think of starting a new job. When you first start a job, you already have a perception of what that job looks like, how you're supposed to act with it, how you're supposed to be in it. Say you get into, say you're a banker. We all know what a banker should look like. If you go in there and you see a guy with like tattoos or something and is a banker, you're gonna be like, ooh, boy, howdy, is he gonna steal my money? How did he get this job? And that's because in our mind we're like, no, a banker is going to be clean cut. They're going to be in a 3-piece suit. They're going to talk professionally. And so and when we decide to go into a job, and in this case a banker, if we feel like we are going against any of those stereotypes or we have that mindset of what they should look like and we try to change ourselves and that's not who we are, then we can have an internal conflict that then makes the job a lot harder than it actually has to be because we're not allowing ourselves to be who we are. And instead, we're trying to fulfill some sort of stereotype, whether that's right or wrong for that position. Same thing with anything. but I think, yeah, especially those clean cut jobs, you see someone with tattoos, you see someone with unkept hair one day, and you're just like, whoa. Boy, did that guy, I don't know how he got this job. He doesn't fill any of the stereotypes that I had for someone that does that. I mean, that's something that I think we all can get over too, because sometimes those people are the big movers and shakers that come in and they're like, I saw it completely differently because that's not who I am. I'm not that type of person. So I started doing something completely differently. And it's like, oh, wow. And then they're the ones that are getting interviewed 10 years later with their multi-billion-dollar companies. Be like, so what did you see that just gave you an epiphany of how to shake up the entire world of XYZ? And it's like, I saw everyone else is doing it the exact same way, and I didn't view it that way, and I still wanted to be in that industry. So I did it differently, and apparently people like not being the exact same way. I mean, any mogul, we can just be like, yeah, Steve Jobs wasn't the stereotypical computer nerd. Elon Musk is not the stereotypical rocket scientist, even if they're not the actual person doing it. Well, that's not an actual rocket scientist. Elon Musk is just the guy that funds the rocket scientist. Like, yeah, he also has a few $1 billion to his name. So I think we're going to give him just a little bit of credit here. And it's that kind of, again, big mindset shifts that I think can also just make people flourish in the way in their current job. If you make it more almost accessible to yourself, you're like, what am I really good at? What does this industry not have that I'm good at? And that makes the job more interesting and more fun for me that I know no one else will do because it's not usually what draws the type of people like me to this industry. So
Yeah.
I think video and real estate agents has done that. Rehumanizing a lot of different aspects of a lot of different industries that slowly became dehumanized, and there's no face to the person to the actual company itself. And now their CEO is kind of like a brand ambassador that everyone knows his name. And I think that's that mindset shift can also help you grow in whatever you want to do, and probably make you more money than you've ever made if you do it right and you actually just lean hard into it, because that's what every successful person has ever done.
Yeah.
So
and on that mindset topic still, it's how long people choose, this is a decision, how long people choose to dwell on a setback. I think that's a massive differentiator for those that find their way and become successful at something. Is there's a lot of bad things that happen to good people, and bad things, like all of our lives are filled with stuff, right? How long we choose to dwell on that, and where we choose to dwell. Am I focusing on the problem or the solution? And I think where people get stuck too often, unfortunately, and again, it's a choice, is they choose to dwell on the past that you have zero control over, while they give up the part that they can influence, which is their future, right? They choose to dwell on what happened to me versus me writing the next chapter of what I will do, right? And I think that's a reality for everybody that's been successful. They've chosen not to dwell on the past. They choose to influence their future.
But again,
it's a mindset thing.
Any time, and kind of put yourself into perspective. I mean, you and I are salespeople at the end of the day. It's not what we like to call ourselves. I don't think that's our primary purpose for either of us. That's why we put on this kind of stuff, educational stuff. This is what we enjoy doing. This is the enjoyable part. But at the end of the day, we are selling something. Everyone sells something. If you want to see exactly what that's like, what was it, last episode, 2 episodes ago, we talked about To Sell Is Human by Daniel Pink. And so reshifting that mindset of, that wasn't a loss. That person just said no. In the sales world is the biggest thing I think that a lot of successful salespeople understand, is sales is a numbers game. I always hear every no, you get closer to a yes. And so it's not, that's an easy way to, in this very specific example of showing that even a quote unquote loss, no, F off. I don't want this. Why are you calling me? It's like, okay, well, that's one no, but I know that my next yes is even closer. And so that can drive you just to be like, okay, let's just do another one then. Let's just do another one. And so it's reframing what you consider a loss to be into just a part of being successful.
Yep.
And that's a huge one that I think we can all work on, because it's still never fun, but
right. No, and
so.
we know the importance of the ability to bounce back and what have you, but you need setbacks to ultimately test that, right? In theory, you can't just have the mindset to be like, yeah, I know that's important, and my ability to bounce back is important. Like, you need setbacks to really test yourself. That's the acid test. That's the proof in the pudding to say, do you have that or not? Do you have that it factor when it comes to that specific thing? And again, I think it's so easy to talk about, and it's so difficult to put into play.
Yeah, 100%. 100% agree. I think that's all that I got for this particular segment. Nick, anything to wrap up on for this?
No, I appreciate it. I like where we went with things today, and appreciate the time as usual. To all our listeners out there. Yeah, to all our listeners out there, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on when and where you're listening. So thanks for joining, and we'll be in the same time, same place here next week.
All right. See you next week, Nick.
Later.
Hey, thanks again for listening. If you want to hear more of Jalen McKenna, Colorado's mortgage dad, and his take on the Colorado real estate market, or just mortgages and mortgage news in general, check out the links below.
Also, check out the links below for more information on products, books, or references made in this podcast. And please don't forget to subscribe, like, and share.